Good day, students. You're welcome to another wonderful session with Timothy Alabi. And today we're going to be looking at figures of speech. Specifically, we're going to be looking at those figures of speech that are used to show comparison and contrast. Those are the figures of speech we'll be looking at today. And at the end of this lesson, we're expected to be able to define the terms contrast and compare, identify figures of speech showing contrast and comparison, and use these figures of speech in context. Let's begin immediately. We've got a starter activity here. Okay, and the first activity that I have for you today is to attempt at defining the terms compare and contrast. All right, what does it mean to compare and what does it mean to contrast? These are the two topics that I want you to define in this class. After that, I want you to use the compare and contrast thinking frame and identify the similarities and dissimilarities between these two terms. So use the compare and contrast thinking frame. If you don't know what that is, you might want to check Google, or you can use any other thinking tool that you know to identify the differences and the similarities between the word compare and contrast. You've got 5 minutes for that. Please pause this video while you do that. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Here, I said when you compare, you focus on the commonalities or the similarities or the shared aspects between the subjects that you're comparing. Therefore, comparing means bringing out the similarities or dissimilarities between two or more objects. So when you're comparing, you're looking at similarities and you're also looking at differences or dissimilarities. Okay, while when you're contrasting, the emphasis is on the differences. When you're contrasting, the emphasis or the goal is to bring out the differences or divergent aspects between the subjects or among the subjects that you're contrasting. So you want to look at differences specifically, okay, when it comes to contrasting. So having explored that, I think it's high time we began the lesson for today. So let's get ready for that. Okay, and we begin by looking at what simile is. Simile is the first figure of speech that we're going to be looking at today. So simile is a figure of speech that compares two things that are essentially different or share a common characteristic. Our simile draws resemblance with the help of the words like, or, as. Sometimes the word akin to also comes on. So basically, when you're employing simile in your writing or when you're analyzing a piece of work, and you see simile. Simile compares two objects, okay, using the word like and as. So a particular feature of the two objects are compared together using the word like or as. Some people believe that simile is a direct comparison, while some people believe it's indirect. Okay, I think that's a matter of choice. So an example is, he is as brave as a lion. When you say that, you're looking at the courage that the lion usually possesses. You are now comparing that to a person. So he is as brave as a lion. So it is the courage, the act of being brave that we're comparing in this context. Another example is, her smile was like sunshine. So you're comparing the brightness of the sunshine to somebody else's smile. So it is important to know that before simile will be achieved, there should be the use of like and as. Okay, now what do similes help us do when we write? Similes help the writer or speaker to draw attention to a specific quality or attribute. This is achieved by likening it to something else that is a little bit more familiar or easily understandable. So we move on to metaphor. Metaphor is another comparison tool or device. Okay, we use metaphors to compare. By definition here, we say metaphor directly compares two unrelated or dissimilar things, highlighting the similarities between them without using the word like or as. So for metaphors, you compare. However, in your comparison, You are not using the word like or as. You are directly comparing. Nothing comes in between the comparison. Metaphors help to create a symbolic representation by stating that one thing is another thing directly. So this way, there's an assertion of a hidden or implicit resemblance between these two subjects that are being compared. We've got 3 examples down here. One is time is a thief. Okay, of course, time cannot steal anything that you've got. Another one is he's drowning in a sea of paperwork. The person is not literally drowning because, as a matter of fact, paperwork does not have a water around it. But by the time you compare the sensations or the feelings of having too much work to drowning, metaphor is achieved. Okay, another example, her voice is music to my ears. Of course, somebody's voice cannot be music. Okay, when somebody is talking, they're not making music. However, the person that says this believes that the same impact music has when he or she listens is the same impact that the voice of the person they are talking about has on them. So metaphors are very powerful figures of speech or literary device that we use in our writing and in our speaking. Okay, metaphors help us to add depth to whatever it is we're writing or we're saying. It helps us to create very perfect and clear pictures, otherwise known as imagery. It also helps us to be able to evoke emotions or convey abstract ideas in a more relatable and clear way. Okay, so metaphors allow writers and speakers to express complex concepts or convey meaning in a concise and imaginative way. Usually, I tell my students that metaphor is probably the most powerful language device because every other compare and contrasting device has a tinge of metaphor. So metaphors are really powerful, and knowing how to use metaphors is essential to being a better writer and a better speaker. So we say by employing metaphors, writers and speakers can engage the audience's imagination, evoke emotions, and convey deeper layers of meaning in their communication. So metaphor is a very important tool if you want your writing and your speaking to graduate from the ordinary to the extraordinary. All right, so we move on to another very powerful language device, which we call oxymoron. An oxymoron is a figure of speech that combines two contradictory or contrasting terms to create a concise and impactful expression. So when you're using an oxymoron, you have two contradictory terms. You say oxymoron creates seemingly illogical statements by placing two opposing words side by side, juxtaposing them. Oxymorons are used to create emphasis and humor or provoke thoughts when we juxtapose these contrary concepts with a single phrase or sentence. And then we've got some examples here. One is jumbo shrimp. Think about that. The word jumbo means very large and shrimp means very small. So when you say that this matter is a jumbo shrimp, yes, you could suggest that the matter seems very serious, but in actual fact, it really is not. Okay, so you don't forget that we said oxymorons are used to create emphasis, to add humor, or to provoke thought, basically. Okay, another one is dark light. We have bittersweet. This experience is a bittersweet one for me. And then when you say, well, the man is, as far as I'm concerned, is a living dead. So these expressions are used to provoke thought, to add emphasis, and to add humor to whatever it is we are writing. To add more to that, we say oxymorons are used to create emphasis and add humor or provoke thoughts. Okay, all right. They often reveal deeper truths or convey complex ideas in a memorable and succinct manner. All right, so we move on to another very powerful device. We call that paradox. And a paradox is a statement that contradicts itself, or that must be both true and untrue at the same time. So a statement that seems to contradict itself, that seems true and that seems untrue at the same time, is called a paradox. Usually, paradoxes are when you look at them, they seem that they are nonsense. Okay, like they do not make any meaning or any sense at first glance. Okay, but when you consider them in a deeper manner or in a deeper way, then you realize that they make a lot of sense. As an example is, I must be cruel only to be kind. Okay, think about that. This is the beginning of the end. Okay, what a pity that youth must be wasted on the young. Another very powerful or common example, which is probably cliche now, is the child is the father of the man. Okay, so these statements have powerful hidden meanings behind their seemingly obvious nonsense or meaningless situation or contrast. So a paradox seems to contradict itself, but when you reconsider, it makes a lot of sense. All right, so paradoxes help us to challenge our assumptions and push us to question the limitations of our because they invoke powerful thinking and wonderment when they are well used. Can serve as powerful tools in literature, philosophy, and rhetoric to provoke deeper reflection, stimulate intellectual curiosity, and convey complex ideas in a concise and thought-provoking manner. All right. So we continue with euphemism. I would say euphemism is a mild or indirect expression used in place of a harsh, offensive, or unpleasant word or phrase. Yeah, euphemisms are words that help you, expressions that help you or help the user to soften the impact of a statement or an expression that otherwise would have a painful effect on the listener or the reader. We use it to shock absorb the painful or the hurtful impact a statement might have on the listener. Okay, so it's using a more polite and tactful or socially acceptable term in order to use that to substitute for an otherwise hurtful tone or hurtful word in order to soften its impact. And we've got examples here. Example one, he is visually impaired. Okay, use that instead of saying outright that somebody is blind. Another example, he has been laid off work, which is a very better way of saying someone has been fired or dismissed from work. And then finally, we've got another example, she passed away, to mean that somebody has died. So why do we use euphemisms? What does euphemism do for our writing and our speech? Euphemisms play a role in shaping communication and maintaining social conventions by providing more socially acceptable or less direct ways of expressing certain ideas or concepts. So you use it to pass an otherwise hurtful message more subtly, and then use that to soften the impact of sensitive subjects or adhere to societal norms and sensitivities. All right. So euphemisms are very important, and we need to use them appropriately in situations and contexts. Okay, so we move on and we look at litetes. Okay, litetes is a rhetorical device that use double negatives to express a positive. So in litetes, two negatives are usually combined together to form a positive. Okay, it's an understatement where the speaker or writer uses negation to express an idea by negating its opposite. So you use two opposite negative words, okay, two negative words to form a very strong affirmative expression. An example is saying, I am not unhappy, to mean you are happy, or is not the brightest bulb in the box. It's not the brightest bulb in the box means the person is not probably the most clever person. And then another example, it is not exactly a small problem, which means it's actually a very huge problem. And the litetes are very important because they help us to emphasize or highlight particular idea or concept. Okay, it works by suggesting the opposite of what is being said. So it creates an understatement kind of effect, an ironic effect, or a sarcastic effect. Masters of language are people who are able to use the these words and these expressions and these devices accurately and effectively. All right, as we're planning and preparing to round off, it is important to know that when you use these devices in your writing, they help you to enhance your ability to express yourself. They help you to communicate with clarity, and then they help you to have a rhetorical impact in order to be able to engage your readers. And an effective use of these terms will most likely help you to be able to stimulate the imagination of your readers and contribute to your style and tone. Okay, so it is important as students to harness the power of these devices so that you can elevate your writing, so that you can elevate your ability to actually speak, in fact, and effectively convey your intended messages to your readers. So one thing that I would advise here is, as you practice, make sure that you try as much as possible to learn to use these devices accurately and effectively, because the use would give a very huge amount of improvement to your writing and to your speaking. And finally, for today, we've got some practice questions. Okay, you might want to look at each of these questions and take them. They require short answers, so they're questions that will make you think and try to recall everything that you have learned in this class. All right, thank you very much for being a part of this. I hope that you've learned one or two things, and I'm sure that next time you will have evidence of having used these terms in your speaking and in your writing. All right, thank you very much. Until next time, I remain Timothy Alabi. Thank you very much for listening and for being a part of this.